Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to have a bit more of a casual video, I suppose, which I'll explain to you why in just a minute. But we're going to be talking about refresh rates on monitors, more specifically 60Hz versus things like 120Hz and 144Hz monitors. Now, it's going to be a bit more casual because I don't actually have a camera to show you guys the difference between them. You're going to need something like a 240 frames per second camera, obviously because of the higher refresh rates. The highest my camera goes is 60 frames per second, so we're obviously not going to be able to show you the difference. It'll all look the same on the camera. So that's a shame. But I just want to make this video talking about a more common discussion coming out, which is what people look for more in a monitor. Do they look for higher refresh rates, like the aforementioned ones, or higher resolutions, like 1440p displays and obviously 4K displays? Now, I've tried basically all of them: 60Hz monitors, 120, 144, and of course all the different resolutions, you know, the normal 1080p, 1440p, and 4K displays. So I've tried everything, so this is just going to be pretty much like me explaining to you the differences between all of them and what my personal opinion is on all the different setups. So let's get into it. Now, the difference between 60Hz, 120Hz, 144Hz is basically the amount of times it refreshes per second. So if you've got a 60Hz monitor, like probably a lot of you guys do, you can right click on your desktop and go to screen resolution, go to advanced, and then go to refresh rate. You could turn it down to 30 frames per second, for example. This is just to give you guys an idea. And go play a game. Now, if your computer's powerful enough, and it usually runs at well over 60 frames per second average in that game, you'll notice that, wow, this doesn't feel right. This is only running at 30 frames per second. Doesn't matter how powerful and your computer is in terms of powering the game and what the average frames per second in the game is, your monitor is only going to be displaying that 30 frames. Because it's running on 30 Hz. Increase it to 60 Hz, and obviously 60 frames is the most it can display, and upward, you know, 120 Hz, 144 Hz. Now, this is where people get lost. So if your computer, for example, say what's a game you like playing a lot, say Tomb Raider is your favorite game to play for whatever reason that might be. Oh, it's a pretty good game, I'll go with that. The campaign was good. And you're barely getting, say, over 60 frames. You're getting, say, 65, 67 average frames per second, which is over 60. If you're doing that consistently, it's good. Give good gameplay. Now, if you jumped from your 60Hz monitor to a 120Hz monitor, for example, you might be surprised when you go in the game and you don't notice any difference at all. That's because, as I explained before, if your game's average frames isn't high enough, you're not actually going to see the difference. So that's where people get lost, and that's why 60Hz is still a good amount for a lot of people, because they won't actually have a computer powerful enough to, you know, show off the extra frames. And if they do, they might need to bump all the graphics way down. And in my personal opinion, after using a lot of these things, I'd rather any day use a 60Hz monitor with graphics maxed rather than a 120Hz monitor with the graphics down on medium or low, for example, just so I could get the extra frames. Honestly, I really would prefer it with the graphics all the way up. It looks much nicer. So that's basically an example of the differences between them. So what's my opinion on 60Hz versus 144Hz? Well, honestly, it made the Windows experience, this is on the 144Hz, a lot nicer, a lot more crisp, a lot more smoother. Just moving the mouse around, you know, moving windows around, things like that. It definitely seems a lot more smoother and nicer. But getting a 144Hz monitor just for the Windows experience would be pretty overkill. So in gaming, I noticed, yeah, it seemed a bit smoother and a bit nicer, and some games that I played, like League of Legends and stuff like that, have an FPS counter on it, so I was sure I had well above what I needed in terms of frames per second. And I mean, I got the 290 VaporX in there right now, so that's a pretty powerful GPU pushing these frames out. So I played a variety of games like League, Payday 2 and stuff like that. And honestly, I didn't think it was as game-changing as people make out to be. like it's this must-have. Honestly, I don't think it's that at all. And if you have a 60Hz monitor right now and you think you're falling behind because of, you know, all these people 120Hz monitor and 144Hz monitor, I am aware 60Hz is still the most popular. Don't, because although it's nice and it does make the experience slightly better and it's a bit smoother and a bit crisper, that's what you really notice in gameplay. And it was a bit easier to snipe people in Payday 2. Which is one thing I noticed. But yeah, it's honestly not that huge of a step up as people make out to be, but it still is nice. So if you have the extra money and you just want to go to the higher refresh rate monitor, then by all means go for it. I'm not saying they're worse than 60Hz at all. It's still an improvement, just not as big as a lot of people make it out to be. And that is just my personal opinion. So keep that in mind. Now, onto resolutions. So, I've used 1080p, 1440p and 4K displays and gamed on all of them, although gaming on 4K is pretty difficult in the current state of things in terms of hardware these days. You're going to pretty much need triple 780 Ti's or triple 290X's to have a good gaming experience on a 4K monitor in terms of not compromising. To, yeah, having to bump graphics all the way down, stuff like that. Yeah, now 4K as opposed to 1080p, that is more of a jump up, and it's a lot more game changing in my opinion than the refresh rates. So gaming at 4K as opposed to 1080p is, you know, it is really spectacular, and it's really, really nice. But it is kind of like a diminishing returns thing in that the sense that you have to put in so much money into hardware to have that good experience, and of course getting the monitor itself, which they have been coming down quite substantially, so I mean that's good too. But yeah, it is a lot. Now, I am aware a lot of people get 4K monitors not for gaming. So I am well aware of this. You know, some people just want the screen real estate, which it does really well, because remember 4K, it's like having 4 1080p panels on, you know, your one monitor. So for example, you know, if you're doing video editing, stuff like that, you can have a full 1080p video playing, and that's just a quarter of the screen being used up, and you could still be doing using the other space for something else. So there are a lot of other uses for 4K monitors aside from gaming, but just talking purely in gaming, yeah, it is a much better experience. So if I was to have to put my weight on one way or the other in terms of what would I prefer in a monitor, higher refresh rate or higher resolution, I would by all means would rather have a 4K monitor at 60 Hz than a 1080p monitor at 144 Hz any day of the week. Now, that is just my opinion. So leave your opinion in the comments below. Be nice, be considerate. I know it's YouTube, so people get a bit, you know, can be a bit angry and stuff like that, but you know, come on guys, let's see, everyone's allowed to have their opinion, and as long as, you know, they can back it up by reasoning, like I just have of my personal reasoning anyways, then, you know, the opinion's more than valid. So, thank you guys for watching. Sorry it's been more of a casual video, but, you know, it's still a video nonetheless, and giving you guys a bit of insight into the whole, you know, monitor debate. And I'll catch you guys next time on Tech Showdown.